As the wind blows outside, the sky darkens, and Friday night approaches. I find myself sitting on the couch, watching a movie I've never seen before. That sounds more interesting than another movie I've seen called Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. This movie is called Bottle Shock. A couple of people that I know are in it are Alan Rickman and Chris Pine, and I'm very intrigued by it. The back says, it talks about winery, the battle between wineries, American and French wineries. I don't know why it sounds so interesting, but it certainly does. So I went to the library and I ordered it and I got it today, and I'm very interested in seeing what this movie has to offer, especially since Alan Rickman is in it and he's no longer alive. May he rest in peace. Cancer is a terrible thing, and at least we have his legacy to keep us going. I'm sitting here watching the beginning of this movie, and it gives so many different shots on wineries. It's amazing. You know, wineries are actually quite beautiful on screen, and I would absolutely love to visit one. I don't drink, and I never will. But you know what? You can't help but find beauty in wineries. I'd love to just simply explore one and understand the process the creation of wine has to offer. Or involves, sorry, but still. Wineries are beautiful. These shots of wineries I'm seeing on the screen make me want to visit one. I mean, drinking aside, I'm sure they're very lovely places. I'm sure they're very good photo opportunities. I would love to take a photo of a winery up close. I find myself fascinated by the process of how things are made. But I would never drink the wine, no. Because it's my belief that alcohol impairs good judgment and common sense. But the wineries are beautiful in themselves. I would absolutely love to take a tour of one someday and actually see the beauty therein without having to taste any of the actual wine. Okay, wow. The movie Bottle Shock starts out being narrated by Chris Pine. Bless his heart, he's a very good actor. I've seen a couple of his movies besides Star Trek, and he's just got it all there. And, you know, acting is something I've done in the past and would like to do again, but I don't know if I'd ever get to his level, but I could sure try. But acting is something I'd want to do with my morals intact, because I have developed a bit of a reputation as the Storm and Mormon on YouTube, and I'd like to keep it. Anyway, Chris Pine narrates about this vineyard and about how his friends with less than reputable palates indulged. I'm not sure what character he plays yet, but then comes this huge montage of hippies indulging in wine and smoking and other things that hippies indulged in. It sounds quite interesting, and I'm really glad I got this movie. I really am. Because, honestly, I'm trying to broaden my creative horizons and understanding more about how things are made, even if I don't indulge in them myself. It may give me a broader perspective on life, and I'm really trying to broaden my horizons. Great wine is great art. That was a line just uttered by Alan Rickman's character. Now, it's still early in the movie, and I don't have a grasp on the characters yet, but it seems to me that there's a bit of a battle being built up to between American wine and European wine. I don't know anything about either, but this is the kind of movie that really just draws you in It makes you interested in what's going to happen next. It just draws you right to the screen. They honestly don't make movies like this anymore. And I'm very intrigued because the American side of the wine in this movie seems to be struggling to find its identity, and the European side of the wine seems to be lushing over the beauty of what wine is and can be. It's really interesting. Wine is a struggle for a dream to some. For others, it's a fascination waiting to be explored that doesn't necessarily have to be consumed to explore it. I'm slowly getting a better picture of what this movie's about. This movie's about trying to keep dreams alive. On one hand, you've got a winery who's struggling to survive with what little they have and trying to keep resources afloat despite the world saying that it can't be done and it shouldn't be done. On the other hand, you have a connoisseur of wine trying so desperately to keep his dream and love for the beverage alive, to the point where he goes through abject humiliation and depression simply for the sake of preserving his dream. This is honestly a very, very intriguing movie. And I can't imagine that people should avoid it. I mean, it's got some swearing, but most movies do. And it's not terribly a bad thing. But to go through life and deliberately avoid learning about these fine arts through movies, learning how to broaden your mind, learning how to really appreciate things even if you don't partake in them. Without these lessons, it is but a half-life. And a half-life is a life that is devoid of joy and passion. Oh, there's a particularly funny part where the proprietor of the California wine and his son have different opinions on how business should be conducted. And they settle their discussion. I don't know if they necessarily settle it though. They settle it by duking it out in a makeshift boxing ring. And the father is trying very desperately to teach his son something, and the son, who is played by Chris Pine, seems to want to whine and complain and doesn't see the point his father is trying to make. It's quite hilarious. It shows the very, very polarized relationship that parents and their children sometimes have simply because they fail to understand where the other is coming from. And they simply are lost in their own little worlds. It's quite riveting. Anyway, I'll leave that up to you to decide if it is for yourself. It's still very early in the movie, but I find myself drawn to this comment that Chris Pine's character just said. I'm still not quite sure of his name. I think it's Beau, from reviews I've read of this movie, but he said the world breaks everyone. No, that's not necessarily true. People break every day, yes, but the world doesn't break them. Their inability to handle problems like adults breaks them. Problems happen whether or not we are prepared for them, and even if we are prepared for them, sometimes we lose our head. Simply put, our attitude determines whether or not we break in the face of the problems of the world. I would love to personally blame the world for all my troubles, but you know what? That's not an adult thing to do. Blaming the world is like blaming a piece of furniture for your inability to get up and do things. It's just not realistic. We have the power to choose for ourselves how we react to things and how we do things and how we live our lives simply because it's within us. We just have to believe it and do it. The world does not control whether or not we succeed or fail. We control whether or not we succeed or fail, honestly. The world breaks no one. We break ourselves simply because we don't have enough faith in ourselves to keep going when life gets difficult and we shut down. Oh, that poor, poor wine seller / sommelier. That poor French idiot. Honestly, Alan Rickman's character managed to insult the one who helped him change his flat tire and happened to be the owner of a prestigious Californian vineyard. That poor deluded monkey thought he was so much better than everyone else, and he pretty much called someone who helped him uneducated. This movie is so very racist and indifferent, but it sadly represents what's going on in America today, and in Canada and everywhere else in the world. Racism, indifference, insult throwing, goodness sakes. We insult each other instead of trying to help each other become more educated about things we do not understand. There are so many things we know, yes, but there are so many things that we don't know. And instead of trying to help each other learn a little more, we waste our lives, we waste our time, we waste our resources, we waste our abilities insulting each other about what we don't know, about what we can't contribute. Instead of focusing on our strengths, we focus on our weaknesses. No wonder society is crumbling to bits. If we were to actually focus on helping one another become better, instead of insulting and finding inferiority in everybody around us, including ourselves, I think society would be a lot better. Honestly, people spend too much time. Actually, it's not spending time, because spending time involves doing something productive to pass the time. It's more of a waste of time. People waste time insulting one another and depriving them of help and focusing on their weaknesses rather than seeing how we can better each other as people in one big society. As if this movie couldn't get any more interesting. I just watched a part where Alan Rickman's character interacted with a character who plays President Whitmore in Independence Day and Independence Day Resurgence. I can't think of his name, but that's not important. Anyway, Alan Rickman's character wanted to taste the wine blind. He wanted to do a blind tasting. He sniffs the wine. He tasted it, and then, in complete mockery of generosity, he spits it on the ground and starts a little insult battle with this farmer who thinks that Alan Rickman's character is simply there to mock the Hicks who produce wine in threat to the French. It's quite interesting that There doesn't seem to be a layer of civility coming from Alan Rickman's character, and I'm hoping that that will change. And that's what made him such a good actor. He was able to really reach into the depths of his soul and pull out what he needed to. He was able to assemble thoughts when it came to acting, because whenever you do act as a character, you have a thought and you build up a woodwork of your character based on the thoughts you have, and you project those emotions in the character, and that's what makes a character a character. And I'm just so very impressed with this movie. I find it fascinating. I don't know how many more commentaries I'm going to do for the rest of the movie, but I would definitely recommend watching Bottle Shock for yourself and really seeing what it has to offer you, because movies have something different to offer to everyone. I know I said I was probably done commenting, but this is very interesting. This wine connoisseur, Alan Rickman's character, has created quite a stir. Simply because he is French, and he's come to taste people's wines, and he's paying them for tastings. I'm pretty sure you have to pay for tastings. But to these very simple folk in this movie, these California whiners, I guess you'd call them, or connoisseurs. I'm not really sure what you'd call them, to be honest. They're all hyped up because this Frenchman has come to see and boast about how French wine is better than California wine. It's quite the battle of wills. And of course, remember, this is a very heavy racist period of time that this movie's in, and honestly, I'm not quite sure if Alan Rickman's character cares too much about the people in general. He's just trying to prove a point. But I'm not so sure he'll prove the point as much as gain an education. Because when we place ourselves in new situations with expectations that we will be the better people and have the superior train of thought, we are often surprised by what we don't know, and that can force us to have a paradigm shift into some new thinking, into some open-minded opinions that may change what our beliefs about certain things are. We shouldn't be afraid to have open minds when it comes to new things, and we definitely should not go into situations thinking we know everything. But you know what? Everyone is built differently, and everyone has to come to that conclusion on their own. There's a comment in the movie about owner's footsteps. Our lives are what we make of them. We own the steps that we make in this earth, in this life. And we only get one shot to leave good footprints all over the world, all over our personal world, all over the worlds that we bring ourselves into with experiences. We only get one shot, so we should take every day and think of what we want to make of it and do it in a way that we will be remembered for doing good and living well. Life is so very short, and we can't afford to waste time, for we own the footprints that we make. We can't take them back. We can only learn from them. Make every footprint in your world count. For at the end of the day, it's yours. You have to own it. You can't pass that responsibility on to anyone else. The philosophy of self-responsibility comes from that. We own what we do, whether or not we want to admit it. And eventually, we'll have to take responsibility for what we do. So it's better to do good things so we can be proud of what we've done rather than try and run and hide in shame. And yet another philosophical topic pops up 2 seconds later. From hardship comes enlightenment. Really, it does. Hardship is necessary. Hardship makes a person dig in their feet to the earth and say, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to endure. I'm going to fight past expectation of failure that I and others around me may have. You know what? Life is not meant to be easy. If it were easy, it would be boring. Life is meant to have challenges so that we can appreciate the good times in life. Is meant to have good times so that we might prepare for the challenges. No life, no road in life, no choice is easy. But life is what we make of it. Life is what it is. Honestly, we don't have the right to just stop living simply because life is hard. We just need to believe that we are capable of continuing to endure onward, that we might make something of what we have. Not everyone has the same, and not everyone thinks the same, but we can still make something of what we have, and it may bring bigger and better things. If not, make the most of what you have and what you can do. Someone will eventually need you and reach out to you for your talents, your love, and your compassion, and all that you can give. And when that day comes, you need to be prepared so that you might be able to succeed in being the helper.